There's not any argument that at this stage that somehow the election of President Trump was not legitimate, but there's no question but what there was a very serious effort made by Mr. Putin and his government and his organization to interfere in major ways with our basic fundamental democratic processes. In some quarters, that would be considered an act of war.
Yeah, that last phrase there, a lot of attention, an act of war. Strong words from the former Vice President Dick Cheney. John Bolton, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, my guest now, sir, and good morning to you.
Good morning.
Just to be clear on this, he's not saying the election wasn't legitimate. What he's arguing is that Russia tried to meddle. Do you consider that an act of war?
Well, I think it's about as close as you can imagine it in the cyber warfare spectrum. I think it's utterly unacceptable for any foreign government or foreign actor to try and meddle in our elections, and that's why I think getting to the bottom of this and finding out exactly what the Russians did is so important, so that we've got a common database. Whatever else they were doing, I think they were trying to undermine Americans' faith in their democratic institutions, and that is very serious business.
Do you find that Moscow does that in the U.S. and other places? Are Western democracies the targets of such influence, or just us?
Well, no, I think it's all over Western Europe. They are very concerned. I was just in Albania last week, and throughout the Balkans, the threat of Russian interference in their elections is taken very seriously, and I think across Europe as well. It would not be surprising. This is the kind of active operations campaign that in the days of the Cold War the Soviets did all the time, and I think it requires a very serious American response.
What do we do about it?
Well, I think, among other things, we ought to be making them pay some prices if in fact, this is what's happened. Not necessarily in their elections, which are fake to begin with, but other consequences to build up a structure of deterrence so that they don't try this sort of thing again. And I think it should affect our relations across the board. Again, there's a lot of misinformation and uncertainty about exactly what the Russians did, which is why getting to the bottom of it is critical.
Do you think Congress, do you think on that point, because you said it several times, will Congress get to the bottom of it? Will we know?
Well, they've got an opportunity if they'd stop fooling around with process arguments about who talks to whom and so on. If we've got information that we've accumulated through our intelligence assets, the sooner we can put it together and come to conclusions, the better for everybody, Republicans and Democrats.
One more comment from Dick Cheney. I would not underestimate the weight that we as Americans assign to the Russian attempts to interfere with our internal political processes. That's a big comment there.
Well, I think it's a supporting argument for the active war point. You cannot, you should not anyway, be allowed to interfere in our elections and get away with it without consequences.
Okay, and the consequences would be sanctions? The
well,
consequences could be we build our technology better than it is now.
Well, stiffening our response to things like Russian violations of the INF Treaty, redoing the New START Treaty that the Obama administration negotiated with them. I mean, I would have a number of major changes in policy toward the Russians, motivated in part by this, motivated in part by the mistakes Obama made, but I think it's all part of the same package. Putin thinks he can get away with almost anything, and for 8 years under Obama, he pretty much did. Well,